Good morning, Bitcoiners. I hope you're doing well. I'm loving my life. Who could complain on a day like today? Not me. No way. No way. Can't do it. We're, if you've noticed, the background is a little bit different. We're avoiding a rake man incident. The gardener is here. The gardener made it, which is good because the grass was long. However, you're going to have to live without the usual swaying tree background for today because I just can't handle listening to Rake Man. Once he's done the mowing, which is bad enough, he'll be doing the raking, which is much worse. Much worse, as you all know. Let's see what folks are saying in that. Whoops, I didn't mean to do that. I still haven't figured out the chat share, but I'll continue to read it. Good morning and happy Friday, says JJ Fox. Great to end the week with you all. It sure is. Good morning. We are discovering who are true Bitcoiners. LFG, says Seaburger17. What an awesome ride on price yesterday. It reminded me of the Bitcoin I've always bought alive. I agree with that, JJ Fox. It's fun. Nappy says, good morning. Sideways Bitcoin is BAF. It's getting spicy, team. Try to enjoy the ride. Citadel Daniel says, Nolan's sense of humor and optimism does help. He's a gift from God. Thank you, JJ Fox. That's really sweet. Good morning, Hassan. TGIF says, Land XR 33. 72 Jet says, good morning, folks. I hope everyone is surfing the volatility wave and not getting rinsed indeed. Only hodlers here. Jesus is King says, good morning, crew. Just join the Orange Pill app. God bless. CB Van preemptively thumbed buttons reward many, Confucius says. Indeed, we like the likes. We like the likes. Give the thumbs up. We're into them. And the sharing is also great. We like the sharing. Good morning, gang, says Soap Miner. What a wild ride the past 48 hours has been. I believe this is what they call a soap cycle. Wash, rinse, and repeat. Indeed, that's what it looks like. Let's go, Bitcoiners. Yo, folks. Good morning, Rake Man. JJ Fox says, indeed, we got a Rake Man. Jack 2K, good morning, Nolan and Great Awakening crew, and happy Friday. I'm kind of bored watching. Must be closed doors. Must be closed doors, indeed. Gardeners could be deemed racist if you think about it. Smash it now. Smash it now. Hello, John Otoro 9283. Good morning to you too. Good morning, everyone out there. I hope you're all doing well. I can see that there's sunshine coming in this window, despite the lack of swaying trees in the breeze. And Bitcoin is running, currently trading for 66,000 US trash tokens the few minutes ago I looked, but my understanding is things are moving pretty quick this morning. Let's see where we're at. Not that we expect any huge rebound, but indeed are we already at 70? Is that real? Are we already at 71,000 US trash tokens? Let me make sure I got that straight. No, we can't be. That's yesterday. Yeah, 67. There we go, 67. That was the start of yesterday's show. I was looking at the wrong feed. Oh, I got to go back to my Rumble app to keep in touch with all you folks. Talking about Rake Man is like the simultaneous sip. No way. We have Rake Man in the house, indeed. We like Rake Man, though. My kids were complaining about the high grass this morning. So there you go. We had the high grass, and now it's all done. Hold on. Let me just get my screen in order here. So we've got a sunrise happening. We've got a Bitcoin operational. All that's left for us to do is have a coffee and talk about what's new. As you know, we like to start every morning with what the NPCs are hearing about, and it ain't going well for them today. As you can imagine, there's quite a few headlines out there that will leave your head scratching. Oh, it looks like I can do share audio now on the clips. Let's see if this goes the way I hoped. Let's see what happens. when I share the tab. Apparently, with the new update, I can share audio on all of these. Oh, that's not what I meant to do. Hey, that's pretty good. What the heck was that? Let's go with that one for a bit, huh? This is a nice look. I'm a fan. Are we winning? We're winning, Familia Diaz. We are winning big time. So here's what we got. If you're reading the Detroit news today, this is what you're hearing. In Trump's war on global justice was going so well. You know, we heard all about this Epstein stuff. Global justice looked like it was just perfectly great globally, not just in America. We had justice globally. And then Trump comes along. And now his war on global justice, everything was so fair. We had such a fair world. And he ruined it. Court staff and UN face terrorist grade sanctions. Oh no. Court staff. Oh no. And the UN, they're so credible. And now they face terrorist grade sanctions. Oh my goodness. His war on global justice is here, folks, according to Reuters. This was a Reuters article republished in the Detroit News. Trump's war on global justice, everybody. Now you see it. What else do we got? We got this one. Oh, that didn't do what I intended. Let's try this again. Here we go. We got this. We got this. Trump is laying the groundwork, everyone, to contest the 2026 elections. Election experts warn. We love the election experts. They're back. We're going to talk about them today. Election administrators and legal experts say recent actions from the Trump administration suggest a broader effort to interfere in the midterm elections. From MS Now. That's what you get from MS Now. There we go. What do we got next? We got this next. We got this. Guys, it's cold. I know it's cold. I'm not near the cold, but for those of you who are, I know you've been doing this for years. You've been warming up your car, right? You go to your car and then you warm it up, right? But you didn't get advice from the experts yet. Do you need to warm up your car in cold weather? Do you really need to? No, we love sitting in a freezing cold car. That's why they built the remote controls and everything to remote start your car, because they were just trying to sell you new features. Nobody wanted it, right? Everybody loves sitting in a freezing cold car. Cold weather will impact Delaware with temperatures hitting single digits after the frigid overnight temperatures. Do you need to warm up your car in the morning before you leave home? Traditional wisdom has said you should warm up your car to make sure the engine is heated and well lubricated before you pull out of your driveway or parking place. However, this might not be the case anymore. Do you need to warm it up? Consumer Report says you don't. The experts say you don't. You don't. Modern cars have improved technology to the point where an engine is fully lubricated in 20 to 30 seconds. Basically, by the time you've cranked the engine, got your seatbelt on, and got comfortable in your car, you should be ready to go. Guys, it's just minus 30. And if the steering wheel is frozen, wear driving gloves. That's why they were invented, right? That's why they were invented. Why you shouldn't let your car idle. This is the problem here, guys. There's a couple reasons. The first, you're wasting gas. Gas isn't cheap. Don't waste your gas on heat. Stay cold, right? You're sending, and of course, you're sending emissions. Greta is not happy about you letting your car. Think of Greta. You're sitting there and it's minus 40 and you're all alone in your car and you're holding on to the frozen steering wheel and you're saying, well, at least Greta would be happy about my sacrifices. At least Greta is going to be happy about this. So there you go, guys. You don't need to warm up your car. Don't give me any of this bullshit. It's minus 30 or something like that. Tough it up, Buttercup. The experts have weighed in. You don't need to do it. You're just putting out emissions. Jerks. Oh, this one's good. Experts warn that organ donation could help drive high assisted suicide rates in Canada. I'm just leaving this one. We don't need to report. We don't need to add anything. It's perfect the way it is. This is just one of those headlines. This is why we started this kind of news, right? This is just perfect. Let's just leave this one. Experts warn that organ donation could help drive high assisted suicide rates in Canada. I wonder why. That's just a headline. Don't ask questions. It's just a headline, guys. Just don't ask any questions about this, okay? It's none of your beeswax. Don't think about it too much. All right, we got this one too. We got the layoffs at the Washington Post. What are we going to do without articles like this? The racist legacy many birds carry. You thought birds were just there for sing-song. You thought they were there for bird watching. You thought they were there to eat some bugs. No, no, no. Washington Post reminds us birders grapple with complicated past linked to slavery and white supremacy. Don't you know that those evil white people have preferences in birds? And that all comes out in slavery. Don't you see it? Don't you see it? You got to read how would we know about the connection between birds, slavery, and white supremacy? You know, I'm starting to change my mind. People are saying, well, Jeff Bezos had every right to fire people from the Washington Post. He's been losing $100 million a year. No, he needs to lose $100 million a year. How would we know about such vital things as birds and their racist legacy? Now, I would have not got this information literally anywhere else in the world. I had no idea. I had zero idea. Okay, I'm sitting here and I'm trying to bring you useful information. I'm trying to be useful. I'm trying to bring you some news about what's going on in the world. Where else would I find a story like this? Where? Nowhere. That's the answer. That is the answer. These are real articles. Birds are racist. Only eating the dark worms. Exactly. There's other things that are racist too. I know it. And this one here is also my favorite. The body cam hustle target. And you remember back in George Floyd time when everyone said, get rid of the police. And I said, that's probably not a bad idea. And they said, well, we'll just use body cams and we'll show just how bad the police really are. And I said, perfect idea. But now it turns out that was all a scam. And really, the whole plot all this time was a hustle. It was a hustle. All right. Because the racist people who said that body cams would fix the problem with police injustice and brutality actually were running a long con. It was a long con. The con was we actually were out to embarrass young women, right? Young women. The body cam hustle targeting young women. Police body cameras were supposed to prevent abuses. Now YouTubers are using the footage for clicks. No way. Can you believe it? That is what is happening, folks. The body cam hustle that targeted young women is in full effect now. That's what we got. That is our NPC news for the day, everybody. There you go. Now you have it. Let's see what the folks are saying in the chat. I have a neighbor who is completely obsessed with idling cars. Bump didn't get axed, did he? Say it ain't so. Nah, Bump I think is kind of retired. I think he's kind of tired. Warming up a car is racist. I feel so guilty. I always thought warming up a car was a far-right extremist thing. Now you know it is. In fact, we love freezing our sacks on a cold seat. Indeed. That's what we love. Charlosky asks, all out pod today? Sure is. We'll see you there later. We'll see you there at 1 p.m. Eastern time. I love my morning news. I feel safer for sure, says Jesus is King. Be careful what you wish for, leftists. Robocops are the future, indeed. You can't make these articles up. You can. Birds are racist. Now you know. Now you know, everyone. All right, let's move on to our main player character news for the day. So this one's fun. Just as we said yesterday, something's going on in the markets with all these fluctuations and lots of people bringing it up today. I actually want to get one more article in here because I did like one before. So here's an interesting take. I don't know how any of this can be verified. But this is not going to be related to our wider stories later. Hold on, I'm going to change the configuration because the writing looks a little small here. So I'm going to reshare. I'm going to stop the share. Stop sharing, and then I'm going to go here, and I'm going to reshare. And we'll see. And then I'm going to do this. Okay, well, we're going to do on this side from now on because apparently it's insisting all the time. And you know what? Now that I see it, I think I'm backwards on this. I got to find a way to fix that. I hadn't noticed that before. Well, I'll fix that another time. So this is a long post that got over 1 million views yesterday. I'm not going to read it all. Basically says there was some stuff going on with NASDAQ and the IBIT and how the collateralized contracts work and the options contracts work and the caps on the options contract works. I don't know about all of these details. Some people think it's relevant. I wanted to share it with you. Now, first up, the highest volume day on IBIT makes sense. It was the biggest volatility day. So with all the crashing, that it shouldn't be a surprise. Additionally, roughly 900 million options premiums were traded today, also the highest ever for IBIT. Given these facts and the way that Bitcoin and Solana traded down in lockstep today, the relatively lower liquidations on CeFi exchanges, this leads me to believe that the nexus of the problem lies with a large IBIT holder. So the point of all this is that he isolates perhaps someone in Hong Kong who blew up and pulled much of the market down with them. So here he says, the last small piece of evidence I have is that I personally know a number of Hong Kong-based hedge funds that are holders of DFDV, which had the worst single down day ever with a meaningful MNAV decline. The MNAV had been holding steady surprisingly well throughout this pullback until today. One of those funds could have been connected to the IBIT culprit, as I highly doubt a fund taking that large of a position in IBIT and using a single entity structure would have had the one fund. So there you go. So it could just be people got squeezed. That could be happening. So I want to say that first because we're taking all of this in a different angle and not just what we see in these stories. We're going to go now and discuss a little bit about what I think is going on and what a lot of people think is going on. So here's NVK laughing, 100% organic. This is a funny post by Adam Livingston here, who says this Epstein quantum sailor liquidated Tether Binance dip is a 100% totally organic and not at all orchestrated FUD to shake out retail retards right before Clarity Act is law and the institutions flood in to take their Bitcoin at a generational entry point. And Grubels adds, you forgot all the super OG whales that are exiting Bitcoin in favor of ETH and Zcash purely because of philosophical reasons. The timing is too perfect. Indeed, that's what it looks like. And so what I said yesterday looks more and more like the case. I have some more evidence, or at least people who agree with me and confirm my own bias. Here's a real PDB. He had a lot to say about it yesterday in a number of instances. He says, be wary of influencers or other people of power asking questions or vaguely trying to connect Epstein to Bitcoin. It's a paid network. Once that narrative passes, they will talk about their coin. That's the top 15 right now as the one to be. I've been offered and declined. Don't ask me how and why. Just know I haven't failed you once and I won't fail you again. Indeed, PDB is real mensch. We're fans of PDB. I got to get him to come to PubKey soon in New York. Here's Cernovich also talking about the connection between Bitcoin and a lot of the political conversations over the last few years. Cernovich says, this is because you. So the first guy says, I don't hate Bitcoin, but I do enjoy. What is the German word? Schadenfreude. So someone excited that Bitcoin is dropping yesterday. Cernovich in comments says, this is because you are stupid. Bitcoin provided a lot of right-wing people a lifeline during the wilderness years. Bitcoin was the asset class that saved the country for a while, at least. You bark like a dog based on what the Washington Post tells you to. And I can personally attest to that. With all that's gone on in the past few years, I don't think I would have ever survived had it not been for Bitcoin. I don't think we would have ever done anything like this show. Obviously, it's a show about Bitcoin, but I don't think we could have come even close to having the time, energy, effort, freedom to be able to do what we do here every morning. Not just for the frameworks and the systems that we use to talk about and predict what was happening in the world over the past couple of years. Like I said, just the freedom to be able to do it. So Cernovich, right again. And that's an important, oops, I didn't switch to the tab. So Cernovich, right again on this point. So there he is talking about this fella with the Schadenfreude, talking about Bitcoin and what's going on. So as we said yesterday, indeed, it looks like it is some kind of market manipulation. Here's another take. They're crashing all markets because Trump won't start a war with Iran, but also because Trump and Petro and Maduro have been taking down the cartels and are now moving on to their corporate partners in the banking industry. So this jives more or less with what we heard from Susan Kokinda yesterday. And Susan Kokinda, indeed, talking about how Trump is moving against the banking cabal, the financial engineers that got us into this trouble. We had a pretty funny note yesterday from Scott Bessent as well in all of his testimony. He said, unlike the Federal Reserve, I can't print magic money, as a little nod that Bitcoiners have taken to Bitcoin. Of course, magical internet money being a pseudonym, longtime pseudonym for Bitcoin. And that is Bessent talking about the role of Bitcoin within this system, according to some. Now, there's rumors out there as well, and this comes from Peter Schiff, and this is also related to Bessent's testimony from 2 days ago. Here you see Peter Schiff say, Scott Bessent admitted he has heard rumors that China is working on a gold-backed token to be used as an alternative to the US dollar for international payments and reserves. This, of course, would refer to what we saw with BRICS, and BRICS remains, I guess, somewhat active despite what we've seen from various other entities within BRICS. So he says, I gave no indication. He gave no indication that he believes the rumor is false. If it's true, he should be very concerned. And that's true, but he should be very concerned only if he doesn't have a solution. And of course, as Bitcoiners, we think he does have a solution, which we're going to get to in a second. Market Node adds to it, Bessent's admission confirms that the petrodollar mechanism is being actively dismantled. That's a frame you've heard here many times. The US dollar hegemony relies on the fact that global trade surpluses must be recycled into US treasuries, the only asset liquid enough. If China launches a gold-backed token, they are offering an off-ramp for sovereigns. A nation selling oil to China can now be paid in a token redeemable for physical gold, neutral collateral, rather than U.S. debt, sanctionable collateral. This creates a shadow SWIFT system where trade settles in hard assets, effectively demonetizing the U.S. debt that funds our deficits. And so other solutions are available, which we're going to talk about in 1 second once we get there. But here's a note that I think fits really well with what I'm thinking about. And this comes from Stephen Moran, of course. So Stephen Moran wrote this. We've talked about it here before. This is from Hudson Bay Capital, a user's guide to restructuring the global trading system. And a lot of people call this the Mar-a-Lago Accords, or the origins of the Mar-a-Lago Accords. Of course, Stephen Moran now on the Federal Reserve Board. And here's one way to analyze what's going on. And Marty Party Music gets it pretty correct here. And this is more or less a frame that I can keep in my head without hallucinating. But that fits and predicts where, that explains what's happening and also predicts where things are going. So we'll know if we're wrong if things don't go this way, but I think they will. So Marty Party says, read again. This is the current strategy, the Mar-a-Lago Accord, weaponizing trade tariffs for leverage to force foreign trade partners to accept a devalued dollar. If the trade partner accepts, they will receive reduced tariffs. Written by Stephen Moran, executed by Scott Bessent and President Trump. In my opinion, the strategy includes revaluing gold to 15,000 US trash tokens, started with 5,000 US trash tokens, and using Bitcoin as a financial vehicle to store value and monetize the debt. That's bimetallism right there. We've been talking about bimetallism for a very long time. The Mar-a-Lago Accord presupposes bimetallism because of this configuration. So the dollar is still used for consumption, and it helps create the commercial relationships related to consumption. And the other end of it is that you've got this way to absorb inflation and also create a new settlement and pricing structure for the part of the economy that matters, which is energy. So not the petrodollar fused with the market, but instead separated and treated separately, and used also by wealth managers to understand wealth itself, not measuring the trade unit of account and trade currency, the US dollar, which is really more about consumption and political ties. So he says here, and this is the important part, and apparently Bessent has said this. I don't know if he said this. This is what Marty Party says. But if you are thinking in terms of the Mar-a-Lago strategy and implementing it within Trump's first term, you'd more or less fall on this point once you realize the subordination of the Federal Reserve was necessary to get this far. There's still a few things that need to be ironed out, and apparently this is what we have. So using Bitcoin as a financial vehicle to store value and monetize the debt. First, all unknown holders of Bitcoin must be shaken out. Bessent stated this. This is the part I don't know if he stated. I don't have any records of him stating it. However, and this has to be done before the asset is revalued, similar to gold. You are living through this strategy. So that makes sense without having to hallucinate any answers and invent new details. Now, the reason why Bitcoin will be the preferred resettlement asset and why the revaluing of Bitcoin is necessary in order to implement this Mar-a-Lago Accord system is because the gold market is about to be absolutely confronted with its trust issues. Remember, Bitcoin and this aspect of engineering out trust that is required for the system to work is one of the major advantages. There's no one out there who needs to go and implement any form of trust equation and conspire to get people to participate in the production of trust. Of course, it's trustless by design, so you don't need to inspire any type of coordination amongst humans in order for it to work. Gold, on the other hand, if you look at what Epstein was saying in the Epstein emails, has already been corrupted. So here we see, according to the Epstein emails, there is no gold in Fort Knox, which I think is the truth. I think many of us have been thinking that for quite a while. He says it's been gone since the 60s or 70s, and that in the emails it's been completely missing. And so that whole framework is going to have some form of existential crisis going, towards it's going to have some form of existential crisis towards the actual gold market. So don't know if this is exactly what's playing out. But again, remember, the trick here to know if you're not just going with confirmation bias is whether or not you have to hallucinate in order to make something true. I don't think we need to hallucinate any of this stuff. It fits and it explains the situation we're seeing, and it also predicts where things are going without having to hallucinate. You don't have to add any information. You don't have to take away any information, because we know, again, here's Mike Benz, who had a great tour on Joe Rogan the other day, saying again and again, I keep telling you the key to Epstein is his financial facilitator role, not the blackmail role. But if you need one more reason to believe me, here's the same Christopher Steele that brought you into Russiagate. Indeed. So we talked about this yesterday, but Mike Benz again making the point that the blackmail was part of it, but the financial facilitator role was much more important. And again, we talked about this yesterday with Susan Kokinda, but this is a framework that continues to explain what's going on. Because, of course, the crisis that we find ourselves in did begin during the financial crisis. The origins of Bitcoin and the trajectory we all set the current conflict to, right? The origins of the tensions and the battle lines that we are now experiencing and witnessing firsthand go back to the financial crisis very explicitly. And that's where Bitcoin was created in these conditions. And Susan Kokinda reiterating what Mike Benz says. So remember, you're in pretty good territory if you're working with what Mike Benz is saying. So Mike Benz, who was able to decipher the architecture of deceit when it comes to media, also being able to pinpoint the architecture of deceit when it comes to financial manipulation. They were one and the same, which is why fiat currency required the propagation and psychological engine that fiat was calibrated towards, which was absolutely oriented towards brainwashing. That's why the messaging and the projection of propaganda was so intimately tied with the markets, which is why you can go back and see, even, for example, racism really not an issue in the New York Times before 2008. Suddenly, you get to the Occupy Wall Street movement, and right when Occupy Wall Street begins, you can see the people doing Occupy Wall Street were black, white, rich, poor, all kinds of people were there. And what you realize right away was people were starting to realize that rich privilege was a real thing, not white privilege. Rich privilege is real. There's no doubt rich privilege exists. I've seen it firsthand. It's an obvious phenomena. I mean, when I go on these trips, you fly, business class, first class, and all that stuff. Trust me, they're not treating people in coach the same as they treat people in first class. It's a completely different planet. And that's like the smallest little inkling of what rich privilege is. It's way beyond that. If you go and look at the way Epstein lived and his lifestyle, and if you analyze the amount of things he was able to talk about publicly without any worry of the emails even getting leaked. One of the biggest stories that I've been saying since the Epstein files became public last week was that they put this stuff in email without really seemingly any worry about it ever leaking, because there would be no ability to get the stories to gain traction because they knew how to suppress those stories. So returning to what Susan Kokinda is saying, the 2008 market crash and the Epstein files aren't about island trips. They're about who was running the bailout from the inside. And so we have been in this psychological and economic war explicitly since 2008. The battle lines of World War III were very clear from that point on. And we can see that the Epstein files, not only is it the financial piece, it goes back into what Mike Benz is saying. It's not just the censorship, it's the disinformation. So remember, Mike Benz's work on the architecture of deceit following the financing flows of propaganda closely tracks the financial flows that Epstein worked on as a economic facilitator, as a money manager. So the more and more we see that these elements were connected, we can see clearly that New York Times and other large publications were caught up in this whole business. And here, just like I said, the New York Times made a concerted effort the moment the financial crisis happens and right into the Occupy Wall Street movement to begin focusing on race issues. And so here's Epstein talking about Sulzberger and the family owning the New York Times for 5 generations now, and saying here that outing New York Times publisher Sulzberger will see the end of the establishment 1 month before the abrupt departure of Arthur Ox Pinch Sulzberger as publisher of the New York Times. Epstein wrote to attorney Brad Karp, "How about Sulzberger would be funny?" To which Karp replied, That would be pretty ironic and give the whole new meaning to the nickname Pinch. One day after the exchange between Karp and Epstein and journalist Michael Wolff, remember Michael Wolff was the one attacking Trump, discussed a scandal that would be the end of the establishment as we know it. So indeed, they're talking about what would happen. And then you see Charlie Rose fired. The Me Too movement begins right then. And from then on, more or less, big names in my horizon. My old favorite, Sulzberger. You and I are old news talking about how these guys were getting caught up in it. And here, this is another one from WikiLeaks saying, what is the sex secret that Epstein believed would bring down the New York Times publisher Sulzberger? Epstein wanted to out the politically unprosecutable publisher as a silver bullet to take the heat off himself, but the secret was never revealed. What was it? We'll find out, hopefully. But indeed, those New York Times being caught up in this is nothing to be surprised by. Again, I think a lot of people have been saying that these relationships existed for a long time. You've heard from Balaji on several occasions about how just irredeemably corrupt the New York Times is. And so most of these institutions, just like we saw from Mike Benn's work, if you follow the money, you'll understand better about what their intentions and incentives are. Trump here yesterday at the, what was this about? Yeah, it was the National Prayer Breakfast. So here he is at the National Prayer Breakfast talking about his invitation to Davos and the speech he gave 2 weeks ago. And he says, I went over to Davos, they invited me, and when I left, they said, that may have been the stupidest invitation we ever gave to somebody. Indeed. And you can see what Trump did when he was there by pointing out all of these financial ties and financial relationships echoes more or less what we're seeing from this architecture of deceit. And indeed, remember at Davos, they had the big No Kings thing put up in the mountains, in the land of kings, the only non-king. Trump goes there and they say no kings. Well, guess who was involved in the no kings financials? Arabella, that is, of course, SBF's family. Warren Buffett, 16 million US trash tokens. Rockefeller, Soros, Tides, the whole gang. We are seeing 300 million US trash tokens nearly involved in the no kings financials. Organic. Not so much. About as organic as the Bitcoin crash that we've seen over the past couple of days. So just realize at this point how much of this stuff is being orchestrated, and that we are actually seeing the true fault lines of World War III. The true fault lines of World War III are exactly what we have learned. They are psychological, and they are economic, and they are propaganda, and they are market manipulation. These are the two most important factors. That's why this whole show is based on, that's why us getting together every morning are about tracking how the architecture of deceit is failing, losing power, losing amplification, losing capacity, and how market manipulation is also failing in the same way. Now, we still take hits. It's not a dead cat. It's able to continue to have dead cat bounces and push back a little, but its maximum power goes down. If you were looking at the HP, if you put a little HP like video game bar and you looked at the fake news industrial complex and the financial manipulators, the fiat financial manipulators, you'd see the same thing. The HP is just coming way down, and they're not really at the same capacity that they once were. So we're able to track this stuff fairly closely. And you can see these institutions that are involved in all of this top-down structure. I've created those top-down versus bottom-up frameworks many times. I actually should bring one up here because they help explain a lot, I think anyway, of what's going on. And it's why I created all these whiteboards years ago, and they continue to be relevant. They continue to explain a little bit more about what's going on. And I think they continue to offer us a pretty good framework to decipher exactly how to navigate this incredible time of change. So here's one that I used for a long time. And you see here from this whiteboard, we've got money in the top-down system. That's even the New York Times right there. Here's the petrodollar, and of course, people on the bottom. You've got information and energy sitting below money, and of course, the people on the bottom. And the flip side here, the Mar-a-Lago Accords and all this effort to energize America using AI and or using the AI business finance model for energy. So it's not AI figuring out our energy. It's the demand and power that comes from wielding AI and the energy required to run it that makes energy production now a national priority, a national security priority, a cognitive security priority. And that's why you're going to continue to see all of these factors as they play out and, explain what's going on in a much more fulsome way than anything else we can see out there. And why you hear Besant saying, it's exactly why I can't manipulate magic internet money. It's the reason and the predicate for being able to separate money and state in the first place. So from there, when Trump makes these announcements that he's going to Davos or that he went to Davos and they regretted it, it's because the institutions that sit just below the money now realize that the entire board is getting flipped. It's all getting turned right around. It's why you see yesterday the Tedros, the WHO guy, remember WHO from the pandemic? Of course, he agrees with Dirty Sanchez, Pedro Sanchez, the Prime Minister of Spain. Here's someone who needs to get fitted for a space drop suit. Wouldn't you like to see this guy flailing next to Fauci? Don't we just are disgusted by people like this? Mike Benz here pointing out the head of the WHO supports Spain's pending legislation to arrest Elon Musk and Mark Zuckerberg if they don't comply with the censorship dictates. Don't get fooled again. It's why the immigration piece, the censorship piece, and the financial manipulation piece all go together. Who do you think's paying who? Not Trump, right? So it's not America anymore. It's why you're seeing all of this stuff go in the direction that it is. Now go back to the Arabella advisors and Soros. So Arabella is heavily related to Soros too. It's sort of a double dip there when you see his own name and Arabella. Arabella is closely connected to his own personal money. And of course, Alex Soros is out saying, great job, Spanish PM Pedro Sanchez showing us what real leadership looks like. So he's saying that Dirty Sanchez, the guy up there saying we need to arrest Elon Musk because people are saying that, and remember what his reason was if you didn't see it. So the Prime Minister of Spain says Elon Musk complained about giving 500,000 citizenships out to God knows who from Africa, God knows who from where, and said this is a human right. If only Elon Musk wouldn't have pointed a finger at it. You shouldn't point a finger. You shouldn't complain, right? So Elon did the mistake of complaining, and so that was the predicate for which you had this Dirty Sanchez Prime Minister come out and say that you need to arrest these people. You need to arrest them. You need to arrest Zuckerberg and Elon Musk because they're complaining about diluting the value of Spanish citizenship and Spanish voting rights and opening up the floodgates to immigration. Of course, here Elon Musk going further, saying Dirty Sanchez is a tyrant and a traitor to the people of Spain. And of course, Alex Soros, all excited and giddy, can't wait, right? And says instead of running, and notice here, guys, notice in the comments, okay? Notice the use of the exclamation point and never disagree with me again. All right. It's fucking people like Alex Soros, males like Alex Soros who use exclamation points. Don't let that be you. I don't see any Elon Musk exclamation points in any of this thread. What I see is this. Spanish PM Pedro Sanchez showing us what real leadership looks like. Instead of running away from society's most important issues, he confronts them head on with sound policy, both principled and pragmatic. We need more elected leaders like him. Okay, that's what you sound like when you use your exclamation points. Don't do it. You're going to be sounding like Alex Soros if you keep with the exclamation points, right? It's not for nothing I say, and I try and save you from the exclamation usage. Don't do it, right? Mario Nawfal reminds us when George Soros' son congratulates Spain's leadership, you know the country is doomed. It's not just because of the Pedro Sanchez stuff, it's the exclamation points themselves. That's the sign. Careful now, right? Yeah. So there you go. Hold on. Exclamation points. Don't forget, right? So there you go. We got that from Alex Soros. So great stuff. And then, of course, here we see all kinds of people agreeing more with this Pedro Sanchez guy. It's not just Alex Soros, right? Scott Lewis underlining, look at this. This isn't the independent thinking of the government or that government. This is bigger than nations. Someone sits above it, pushing pressure downwards. Britain, France, Spain, and others, all moving at the same time, all using the same language, all normalizing the same ideas. This isn't about hate speech or algorithms. It's about the next wave of people waking up, more people speaking, more people questioning why they are waging war on the West. That's the primary objective of what's the primary objective of this war. The primary objective of the war is to remove your enemy's capability to resist, and that is exactly what's happening. Look at this. Look at the pathetic body language of this guy, though, for a second. Let's just remember we are in a world of persuasion. Look at what Trump does, and look at this guy. He's trying to use the Jake Tapper. But it's so, what about, but it wasn't fair. He says, please help me. I'm going to be calm. Just please help me. I'm so hard. I'm the reasonable one. I'm trying to be, but what about the racists, right? So this shit doesn't work. It's a zero. It's a zero. So the only reason and the only way this guy can get his way is to go and try and prosecute people from complaining, because he himself has the persuasion ability of worse than Joy Reid. This guy probably would lose a debate to Joy Reid. That's how kind of pathetic people we're dealing with here. Brian Stelter probably has more testosterone than this guy. Probably. I bet you if we had a fight between Brian Stelter and this pathetic Spanish loser, Brian Stelter would win. He would win. That's how weak this guy is. Brian Stelter could beat him up. Brian Stelter could beat this guy up. Now, that doesn't mean anything in a world of ideas and market manipulation, but it should show you that if they don't have censorship, they have nothing going for them. And that's why, indeed, when we perceive there's something outside that this person is not telling you the real opinion, the thing we have been sensing for so long, what lies behind the curtain, the very famous Wizard of Oz allusion, of course, to what lies behind the curtain, that there is some unseen force that's out there. You're starting to see more and more people say that in the open, and you're starting to see people give it a name. And you've even got Bill Maher yesterday here saying QAnon's real. Bill Maher. Here he is saying we owe them an apology after what he's seen from, and Stephen A. Smith with him. So you're seeing now this whole persuasion game, and we're going to talk more about Trump's actual game as we go forward, but you're seeing more and more of this play out exactly as many predicted a long time ago, exactly as people predicted. People are getting drawn into the script. They're getting drawn into the story. They're using the wrestling kayfabe in order to suck people's attention in, to get them to start identifying with characters in the story. You know, NPCs all want to be main player characters. Main player characters want to be in the game. They want to experience it. And they can't be told how to be a main player character. They've got to be sucked into the storyline. And it looks like Stephen Smith and Bill Maher have been sucked in enough to start seeing the actual battle lines, to start seeing that indeed there is something behind the curtain. And
what were your thoughts about the Epstein files and 3 million pages being released? And, you know, now we are hearing that Bill and Hillary Clinton have both agreed to testify in the House ahead of the contempt of Congress vote. What are your thoughts about that?
Well, I mean, this is certainly something we were talking in my meeting today about what I'm going to talk about on the show Friday, because it's just too interesting. And also, you know, I can't believe I'm saying this, but where does QAnon go for the apology? You know, I mean, QAnon, which believed in lots of really ridiculous things, like, you know, Democrats eat babies, but they were kind of harping a lot on the idea that the elites are running this pedophile ring. And I mean, I made jokes about them. I also made jokes after the Epstein thing happened originally that were on the idea of, well, you know, obviously there was some smoke there. Well, now with all that's come out in the last couple of weeks, there's a little more than smoke. It does look like anybody who was at all able to get in touch with Jeffrey Epstein, he was the
We're
man.
doing it.
They just yeah. I mean, and then they all lied about it. Everybody has, and the arrogance also of thinking they could just use their real name in an email, which they did, and didn't try to like
Wow.
couch it in, when I used to get pot before it was legal, it was like, I'd like 2 shirts, please, and no seeds in the shirts this time. You had to sort of codify it. No, they're just openly talking in emails about
Well, they codified
this
with
sort of, sexual perversion, and that they were all doing, and lots of people who you didn't think, or I never imagined were doing it. I see these names come up. So, I mean, QAnon, yes, a lot of crazy there, but you know what? You weren't totally wrong about that.
And we've been saying for a long time here that, of course, you have to be careful with anything Q related, right? Like this guy says here, there is no such thing as QAnon. There is Q and there are Anons. Well, we've been saying for a long time that, certainly there was disinformation plugged into the communications channel. So you had to be very careful. You had to have really trusted people that were able to vet. I'm not one of them. I don't know between one statement and another. I have some idea of who's credible, but I don't know how good they are at filtering what is disinformation and what isn't real. But we've done a pretty good job here in only bringing some of the ideas forward that have checked out with enough people and that seem more or less credible. And it continues to fit and explain the world we're in and the battle lines that are there. More and more people seeing that in all of these notes. Of course, here's the MBS story. Epstein very worried from the beginning that MBS and the famous capitulation tour of Trump, which was a huge deal at the very beginning of Q. One of the first winks that a lot of people think was a sign that Trump was running this clandestine kind of wizard war that the Muggles couldn't quite perceive was the famous sword dance and the capitulation tour where Trump went to Saudi Arabia in 2017 and he went to Israel right after in Jerusalem, and then he followed that with the trip to the Vatican. So the 3 big religious outposts saying, I know what you guys have been doing. You're either on my side and we're going to fight this cabal, or you're with the cabal. And so here we're seeing this proves Q is real. I'm telling you guys, this is huge. Look at the Epstein emails about the Saudi corruption purge. Why was Epstein traveling to Riyadh, Saudi Arabia in 2016? There are tons of Epstein documents about Riyadh and Saudi Arabia. Read the email below, look at the date. And indeed, lots of people talking about this. And this fits entirely with the worldview that we've shared here for a long time, that the most powerful and important relationship or the most important allies to America right now have nothing to do with our old allies in America. Europe, completely broken, useless, treacherous, absolutely the enemy of America and America's people, and an enemy of the world, according to many others. And that the most important relationship that America was cultivating was with the region, with the Middle East. I've been going along with the administration sort of just before or just after 6 times in the past 2 years. I went right away in May 2024 when I heard that this was coming, Trump was coming back, we were probably going to win, and that there was a chance we were going to get him to come into Bitcoin. The minute I heard about that, I was in the Middle East, cultivating my ties there. I had a few ties from when I was at Kraken. I had a few ties from from the early Bitcoin days. Sort of forgot about them during the Joe Biden years because we were just under complete and total attack all the time. And like what we heard from Cernovich, Bitcoin was a lifeline. We sort of had to create Fortress MAGA America Bitcoin in order to push back against this, understanding that Bitcoiners were the most viable group that could move in unison to one political party in order to win and wouldn't be caught up with all the psyops that divide most people according to red and blue, that we were able to perceive and see through that and start getting at the incentive system and the subconscious programming that money can actually create using the propaganda channels that we looked at in the whiteboard earlier. So seeing that these relationships were important and that we needed the relationship in particular with Japan and the Middle East, I started going there. I was there not long after, of course, when the Trump rally happened at Nashville, when the Trump speech happened at Bitcoin 2024. That same group came and met me in Nashville. I hosted them a little bit with friends, went all around, talked about what the partnership would look like. I went back at the end of 2024 with the Trump son, Eric, when he was just getting into Bitcoin. Steve Witkoff was in that trip. We had Paul Manafort with us, all kinds of members of that part of the administration. And it was on that trip that the royal family of UAE first made their allocation to Bitcoin. They bought the ETF. I was back within a few weeks after that at the Satoshi Roundtable last year. We were met by all the religious leaders in the area. We had the main, just put it this way, lots of people came through, lots of people who were relevant came through. And we met them all, talked about Bitcoin, talked about this new potential partnership between the United States and the region. And not long after that, I was back again in May, just before Trump's trip. All of my friends over there that are working in Bitcoin, that are from these places, ended up coming right to America for after the Trump tour that he took over there. Then all of them came back again to America to participate in Bitcoin Las Vegas. And then I went again to the region for F1. All the same people were there again in December. More ties, more associations between, think of it as like the way traveling courts in a kingdom would function, right? I'm not associated directly with the Trump administration, but it's part of a sort of traveling circus. And you go over there and everyone's meeting and everyone's talking, and eventually things happen, and things happen like the strengthened ties. That trip we took back in December was just after the MBS trip to America, where America really started to solidify and wrap up this whole kayfabe between Elon Musk and Trump and the whole story with Saudi Arabia. Remember, the Epstein files were released the moment MBS was in America, and you had Elon Musk rejoin the administration for that famous dinner. So we've been saying for a long time, this is what was going on, and it looks more and more like the case. We can perceive some power structures behind the curtain, and on the other end of the equation, you had new power structures forming, Bitcoin being the context of a lot of these relationships. Of course, they're deeper than that, but it's a big part of it, right? And so you're seeing Trump now reinvigorate this kayfabe style, this way he has of persuading. Like I said, the fake fight that he had with Elon Musk back in May last year, when all of this stuff started, right? The fake fight that he had with Elon. Remember what that induced. I've said it many times here. That induced the largest conversation you've ever heard in your life about ending the Fed. Remember that Epstein files, using the Trump fake fight with Elon Musk, the kayfabe, what that did was it brought the conversation to what's the appropriate. It was about the big beautiful bill. It was about spending, right? Elon objected to Trump spending so much money, and it created this conversation about end the Fed. And everyone said, oh, he's been compromised. He's spending money. He's printing dollars. He's compromised by the bankers. And it created this whole narrative, and it got everyone wondering about Epstein, about ending the Fed. You've never seen the conversation be that wide. You've never seen it take on those dimensions. Now Trump is doing it again. He's doing it again. Everyone worried yesterday that Trump is now friends with Clinton again, right? So he defended Clinton and the Epstein files yesterday, right? Well, welcome to kayfabe, guys. Brian Cates here is saying years ago, Trump would openly talk about many times Clinton went to the island. Now his hands are kind of tied. Only stupid people have to have this explained to them. He's the freaking president now. what the hell is he supposed to say? Yeah, I hope that they hang him, right? He can't say that. What do you expect? Don't forget this from a long drop a long time ago. POTUS will not be addressing the nation on any of these issues as people begin to be indicted and must remain neutral for political reasons. This is back from 2017, not long after the original sword dance in Saudi. And now you're seeing more and more people talk about it. The Epsteins, of course, believe here that Vince Foster and Hillary Clinton had the sexual relationship. Robert Barnes underlining this was widely believed in DC at the time of his death. Never forget the famous Norm Macdonald skit about this on The View, where Norm Macdonald says, they murdered him and just kept playing the gag, and it was hilarious and da-da-da. So now in the Epstein files, we're seeing more about this, and perhaps going to get some answers about it. Just like here, you see MJ Truth Ultra talking about the Trump Bill Clinton situation as well, saying Trump today, it bothers me that people are going after Bill Clinton. Trump over the years, don't forget, you need to look at Bill Clinton. He went to the island 28 times. I hope everyone realized this is classic Trump 5D psychological chess. He is the one that set it all in motion. He released the files. His guys set it all there. And for the upcoming Clinton hearing, it's not flip-flopping. It's a tactic known as a strategic highlight amplification. By loudly defending Clinton now, after spending years screaming about him being Epstein's favorite frequent flyer, it's the political equivalent of don't look over there, while secretly shining a spotlight brighter than ever. Every time he says, leave Bill alone, the media critics replay the old clips, and indeed, that's, accusing him of Clinton being Epstein's island regular. Every sympathetic, I like the guy quote keeps the Clinton-Epstein connection alive and trending, and it forces more amplifying coverage of the files, photos, logs, and keeps the pressure cooker on maximum boil. You're witnessing genius level tactics. That's what I believe. And I think that if you add this up and look at where it's headed, you'll see that, remember, Trump, when he brought when the famous Billy Bush Sunday grab him by the, as we all know, the vulgar thing that Trump was caught saying, remember what he did the next day at the debate? He brought all of the Clinton victims. So there's no way you can imagine that Trump doesn't know how to fight Bill Clinton. And he's done it before, right? Hold on, I got to charge my laptop. So he's done it a few times. We're seeing him do it again. It shouldn't be seen as a surprise. It's just classic Trump. It's what he did when the it's exactly what he did with the Elon fight, right? You bring a drama, you bring a story, you change characters, you change archetypes, suck people in, and then get folks to talk about it. He's doing it now as well. You're seeing his ability to manipulate the comm strategy, just like we saw yesterday. I don't know if you guys caught it, but Alex Jones saying Trump is de-escalating in Minnesota for this reason. He's worried about some kind of false flag desperation move that would get blamed on MAGA and him. So he's pulling back, right? You're seeing him make these comments. Here's Johnny Midnight saying Trump says he is adjusting his mass deportations policy to go into cities if the mayors or governors ask and say please, adding, I don't want to go and force ourselves into a city even if the numbers are terrible. Here, Oilfield Rando says Trump is adopting the Democrat comm strategy. When talking on legacy media outlets, tell normies what they want to hear. When talking on the very online forums, tell the MAGA base what they want to hear. We're going to have to pay more attention to actions than sound bites. And indeed, on the same day, he says, I love the smell of deportations in the morning. Chicago about to find out why it's called the Department of War Apocalypse Now. And you're seeing, again, like I said, more and more of Trump adjusting his style in order to get his message across. And you're seeing, here's sort of proof, I think, of what's going on in Minneapolis. Patrick Casey saying, if you want to know how it's going in Minneapolis, don't listen to right-wing pundits. Listen to Will Stansel. He doesn't think his side is winning. He recognizes Trump's shift in strategy is proving effective, but you'll never hear that from the black pillars on Twitter. And here he is going on about how bad things are there. They've changed their tactics to be more secret police than open military occupation. My sense is that more people are getting grabbed in early hours of the morning. Feels like they're trying to scare observers off. No one has left hiding. And indeed, you're seeing, even the actual strategy Trump's using on incentives and the systems that would be used to deport people. Here we find out that the actual board of deportations, I guess it's some kind of bottleneck. Here you see Trump admin took a sledgehammer to due process, largely eliminating the Board of Immigration Appeals process and mandating dismissal of all appeals, which cost 1,000 US trash tokens, thanks to, I don't know what OBBA is, filed after March 9th, unless a majority of the BIA offers to hear the case. Real political data says Trump admin just gutted the appeals process for immigrants, the main bottleneck for deportations, and you have people really convinced that deportations are just stopping. I don't think they are. I think Trump is absolutely going after this type of persuasion and using these tactics in order to continue to manage public opinion. And again, this is just another one talking. This is war clandestine talking. What I told you the day it happened. I told you the day Trump got into this fight with Elon, I said, this is kayfabe. And every day that we saw people talking about the budget and where's the Epstein files, and I said it consistently from then until now, you are watching persuasion. You are not watching a fake fight and Trump losing power and losing his base and blah, blah, blah. You are not seeing anything like that. War clandestine saying the exact same thing. Observe the timeline. June 2025, Trump and Elon have a very public social media spat and leads to a falling out in which Elon claims Trump is in the Epstein files. So what he's not saying here is all the Fed stuff. The financial part, everything we heard from Stefan Miron, everything we heard from Besant also fits into this whole formula. It's not just about the messaging. It's also the financial system that incentivizes the messaging apparatus. Again, go back to what Mike Ben said. We have the architecture of deceit, which he perceived. The architecture of deceit has financial incentives inside of it. The architecture of deceit is financed. If it wasn't financed, it wouldn't work. The fiat requires propaganda to propagate. It doesn't work. It's word-based money. If you're going to have word-based money, you need the words to spread. People have to believe it. And so Trump is fighting the financial system using manipulation of the media and storylines and kayfabe and wrestling and all these other issues, all these other tools. And so here he's saying the result of the feud was a massive rise in public interest in Epstein, particularly on the left. Jump to the present, Trump and Elon have slowly and quietly gotten back on good terms. Elon has attended multiple events with Trump, including private dinners, Scavino's wedding, memorial service, White House dinner with Saudi Prince bin Salman, exactly the day on which they said they're going to release the Epstein files. Elon dropped his whole America Party opposition to Trump, publicly said he would back the GOP in the 2026 midterms, and donated to Republican PACs in order to prevent the radical left takeover. Now the new batch of Epstein files comes out, proving that Epstein was a Democrat financier, puppeteer, and shows that Trump and Epstein were enemies. Trump has mentioned many times, but not because he was implicated in any crimes, but because the Democrats were emailing each other about how to stop Trump from becoming president and how to sabotage him when he was in office. Don't forget, you had Epstein communicating with the Virgin Islands, remember the Virgin Islands lady for the impeachment, and she was getting talking points, remember? And she was the one who, remember, we loved the joke, you mean my constituent Epstein? That lady. I was just fielding calls from my constituent during the interrogations. We see the timestamps, and it was literally live. Trump was mentioned many times, but of course he was not manipulated in crimes because they were emailing each other about how to stop Trump from becoming president, how to sabotage him once he was in office. So technically, Elon was telling the truth about Trump being in the Epstein files, but has ambiguity coerced a large portion of the public, particularly the left, to be interested in the release of the Epstein files because they thought it would be getting Trump. Surprise, it led to the Democrats, which Elon already knew from the beginning. So what's the end result of the feud? Trump and Elon are still working together to defeat the Democrats, and Elon managed to get Democrat politicians and their voters to demand the release of the Epstein files, which he knew would lead to the Democrats. Yes, I am suggesting that Trump and Elon feud was fake, and they psyoped the left into caring about Epstein. The only other option is that it was just an extremely fortunate coincidence. So we're almost a year ahead on this story. I think it's right. This explains it. You don't have to hallucinate some weird fight, and that's a good sign. And where does it all lead to? Of course, right? Trump is doing it again with election integrity. Here's Caroline Leavitt saying the exact same thing, because that's the next step. It's the financial flows, it's the media, it's getting people interested, and then it is showing them the truth about our democracy, right? An entire scam. And here we see Benny Johnson say, the people in this room, considering what you have all said for many years, that Russia interfered in the 2016 election to help Donald Trump, you should all be very happy that we finally have an administration that is looking into that. And here's what she says exactly.
It's the media who has said that there's Russian interference in American elections. You guys have been saying that for many, many years. So the people,
in Fulton County.
the people in this room, considering that you all said for many years that Russia interfered in the 2016 election to help Donald Trump, you should all be very happy that we finally have an administration that is looking into that, and we'll be happy to keep you.
And it gets better. It's happening all across the news, right? Here's another incident of it. And look, this girl's doing the look at her face. You think this is going to work anymore? Look at the level here. I'll show you. Look at the level of persuasion of what we saw from kayfabe, the sword dance, Elon, Trump, what we're seeing from everyone now interested in election integrity. Here's Scott Jennings on CNN yesterday talking about the 2016 election, and you can see how this trap is being laid. Look at her face. She's trying to do, again, like the concerned face is going to persuade people. Like if I can just do a concerned face, then everyone's going to believe me, right? But it's zero. It's a zero, because you're dealing with some of the most powerful persuasion in the history of the world, and it's not going to work.
So there are already some federal requirements on states to try to engage in some best practices. For what purpose? To give people confidence that the election is running fairly. Now, at the beginning, we talked a little bit about people believing that elections have been stolen. It's not just 2020. A majority of Democrats in this country think the 2016 election was stolen, and I suspect a great many Democrats still think 2004 and 2000 were stolen as well. So this is a problem that has plagued both parties, the idea that they don't believe the outcome of elections. And the way
I'd like to clarify that point, though, as I just want to say, there were people in 2004 that thought voter suppression tactics were taking place in the state, which could still be a true statement. But what never happened after 2004 was an insurrection at the Capitol. In 2016, there was proof that there were external foreign agitators that were targeting certain types of no. What I am saying and what Donald Trump said is not very different.
That's the bipartisan conclusion of the a congressional investigation.
My political analysis is that a majority of Democrats think the 2016 election was stolen.
What Ashley just said.
Poll after poll after
majority of Democrats. I've never heard
that.
Really?
If you walked into a Democrat political dinner tonight and said Russia did not steal the election, you'd be thrown out.
Can I be clear?
I think it is actually a good question where those numbers come from.
As a reliable source here, I walk into Democratic dinners every night, and just let me tell you, we're not talking about whether the 2016
but if you polled it, to be honest, if you polled it, come on, guys.
I think it's really important.
Because how many Democratic dinners have you been at lately, Scott?
I look at a lot of polls. I'm just telling you, Democrats believe the 2016 election was stolen by Russia.
No, my friend.
And in 2000 and 2004, Democrats on the floor of the House tried to stop the election.
So the facial maneuvers, it's not going to work. And here's more sucker punch coming. And of course, we see from DNI Gabbard being in Georgia and the election systems there. Here's John Solomon talking about what's next. And of course, the election integrity. It goes back to Russia. It's just a persuasion game. And it looks like the incredible multi-year tactics are actually bearing fruit, and it looks like we're going to get more answers. And here you have John Solomon saying much the same thing.
I believe that the President of the United States is soon going to be briefed by Tulsi Gabbard and other intelligence officials, based on my reporting, about additional intrusions, significant, large-scale intrusions into various forms of our election system. Now, I'm not talking about getting a machine and flipping the vote, but maybe getting enough of state voter databases that a foreign power could work with people on the ground in the United States to fill out fake registrations for people who are on dirty voter rolls. Those licenses that were sent into Chicago were going to be used to make absentee ballot applications, according to the FBI predicate. By the way, Chris Wray's FBI didn't look at that. They shut it down. If a foreign power is that far into the election databases of state systems that they can figure out what driver's licenses to send here, the next question becomes, who were they working with on the ground? Who was going to file those ballot requests? I think that's why Tulsi Gabbard was down in Georgia, why you might see her in Arizona, why the FBI will probably be in Arizona, and why the president's about to get a briefing. And all of this new information could have a profound effect on the Save America Act, which is, all right, some people say it feels like we're doing an awful lot. There's not a real problem. These next revelations, if the president were to declassify them after he gets debriefed on them in the next few days, they could educate senators and House members and give them a greater inspiration to maybe go ahead and do the voter ID and the citizenship check. That is a big moment. Tulsi Gabbard and Kash Patel and Pam Bondi are driving this. It's been below the radar, but they're doing some really big stuff. Now the president's going to find out what it is, and at that point, the opportunity to declassify it. Let's see what it is. There's one other element to this. If government officials lied to us after the 2020 election, there's still an opportunity in some of those cases to pursue criminal cases against them. We'll see where it all comes out, but that's what's going on in the background of the Save America Act debate right now.
And that's why, again, when I said that Bitcoiners would break to Trump in 2024, it was because Bitcoiners have as a worldview, don't trust, verify. We didn't need proof about the 2020 election being stolen because we knew it wasn't auditable. We knew that you couldn't count the results. We knew they made no sense. And without any way of auditing it, you would have no way of determining what happened. So that's why, again, 2026, with the fraud in Minneapolis, with the election counting, with even deep fakes, the whole idea of chain of custody, of provenance, of auditability is the number one story. So go from the 2024 story to the 2026 story, you're going to see that the don't trust, verify meme, part of the foundational operating system, I would say memetic number 2 when you come to Bitcoin. Memetic number 1 being 21 million. I think the top meme of Bitcoin, the most foundational aspect of Bitcoin, is the 21 million. But your brain immediately goes to, how do we know there's 21 million? Well, decentralized architecture is there. But inevitably, the decentralized architecture does hint at meme number 2 in Bitcoin. Meme number 2 of your worldview being altered by Bitcoin, by being foundationally supported by Bitcoin. What it means to be a Bitcoiner, really, in the end, what it means to be a Bitcoiner is that you understand don't trust, verify at a fundamental level. It is integral to your worldview. It is to mine. And so we see don't trust, verify is about to become one of the most important subjects in 2026. And audits, I think, are going to be in the air all year between Minnesota, between AI verification for videos, and between the actual changes with the elections. You're going to see the entire story around don't trust, verify become one of the more important aspects of what's coming. One of the more important reasons why Bitcoiners will move in a block and psychologically support these changes, because don't trust, verify is the name of the game. And you're going to see that people who don't follow this idea, it won't break by political lines. It'll break by whether or not don't trust, verify is part of your worldview or not. That's why we're breaking from blue and red finally, and for real, Trump will get his actual base, his constituency, to align with don't trust verify, exactly as Bitcoiners do. No longer the fake Republican, we're conservative and Christian and all these fake things they go on about. And the perfect proof of this, of course, is this scumbag Mike Pence with the bugs on his head coming out and, of course, opposing the SAVE Act yesterday. So here we see former Vice President Mike Pence has come out in opposition to the SAVE Act, and Unseen says it all makes so much sense now since the masks are off indeed. And you have the actual old guard of the Republican Party now getting swept up in all of this. Pound for pound, he was probably Trump's biggest enemy and obstacle during his first term. Very little that happened would have been possible without him on the inside. I never liked him, but the level of treachery is hard to comprehend. His handling of the COVID task force was very bad. And indeed, Mike Pence better get fitted for a goddamn space drop, because this guy is a fucking Benedict Arnold traitor. And never bring him around to any Bitcoin conference, because he's going to be another subversive actor. We don't need him. Even if he's trying to run for president again, tell him to fuck off. Roger Stone saying in an epic effort to destroy whatever tiny little speck of support the former Vice President Mike Pence might have. He torched it all today by opposing the SAVE Act requiring U.S. citizenship in order to vote. He is literally a moron. Michael Flynn says he has no sense of what is truly happening across America. He never really did, but this moronic act blew any political capital he ever had. And the piece of shit keeps attracting flies. And we love the memes. And of course, this is exactly what his destiny and future are likely going to look like. Just basically fly bait. Now, the good news is it looks like the Republican Party is bending towards Trump, bending towards the Bitcoin worldview, bending towards don't trust verify. 2 days ago, John Thune said that the SAVE Act can't go through because of the zombie filibuster. Now he's gone back on it. I'll explain what the zombie filibuster is in a second. You're not going to believe how stupid it is. Here he comes out and says the SAVE Act must be passed to ensure illegals aren't voting in the elections. The easiest way to do this is to bring back the standing filibuster, and it looks like it's what's going to happen. We'll see, but here we do know a little bit about what the zombie filibuster is. Arthur McWater is underlining. He says, I asked Grok to explain why the SAVE Act is blocked by a zombie filibuster. Buckle up. This would be hilarious if it weren't so stupid. This would be hilarious if it weren't so stupid. SAVE Act itself has a 53 to 47 majority support. Can't be passed because the 47 can just silently object indefinitely. So the bill would need 60 votes to pass. So basically what it means is the zombie filibusters, you don't have to do anything. You just say, I don't want to vote on it. And then you can hold the entire Senate hostage. This is the zombie filibuster. Literally no effort needed. So proof of work, anyone? Another Bitcoin meme going to enact change here in America. We're in an era of action, not sitting around talking. It is the era of action. It's the era of actually doing stuff. It's the proof of work era. Meme number 3 in Bitcoin. So you're seeing the rising consciousness of Americans being lured into this stuff and happening upon all the memetics we've used in Bitcoin in order to be, for lack of a better word, alchemists in this whole story, right? Bitcoiners, as I've said many times, are going to win this fight because they've cultivated the necessary spiritual, psychological fortifications in order to overcome all of the stress and trouble we find ourselves in. So here, wait so they can just end the zombie filibuster so the bills can pass with a simple majority. Yes, they could. That would only take 51 votes to change procedure. So are they going to do it? Yes. So why don't they? They don't want to because it might be used against them the next time the Senate flips all this. Oh, the filibuster, end the filibuster. It'll be used against us. What in the actual fuck? So an absolutely essential voter security bill with 85% public support is blocked by a few Republicans who don't want to change procedure because they're anticipating losing in a few months, and a few Democrats who will vote as a bloc against any Republican measure, no matter how bipartisan it is. I love America, but I am disgusted with our politicians. Democrats don't want to allow electoral security to pass, and Republicans just like losing. The good news is they're going to do it. Ted Cruz says has to be done, and he says, I'm passionate about the SAVE Act. We got to nuke the zombie filibuster and require taking talk. So it's just zombie versus talking. So you can filibuster, but you actually have to have the manpower to do it. You actually have to go and do it, and they're going to run out of juice, and then you can push it through. So here he is and says, let's force a vote and get it passed. Here is Ted Cruz redeeming himself in many ways.
Yeah, look, I'm a passionate supporter of the SAVE Act. I am a sponsor of it. I'm fighting for it. I think it's critical. Protecting election integrity is critical. What I'm urging my colleagues is that we should nuke what's called the zombie filibuster, which is the ability for Democrats to filibuster it without lifting a finger, and that we should require an old-fashioned talking filibuster, require them to stand up and talk and talk and talk, and we can use procedural tools to make it incredibly painful for Democrats to block this. That's the case I'm making my colleagues. I think a number of my colleagues are supporting me in that. I hope we do that because that's a tool to force a vote and to get the SAVE Act passed. Yeah, look,
So looks like it's going to happen, and it looks like Trump is going to, lure people again. And indeed, Trump said exactly that yesterday. America's elections are rigged, stolen, and a laughing stock all over the world. We are either going to fix them or we won't have a country any longer. I'm asking all Republicans to fight for the following: Save America Act. All voters must show their ID. All voters must show proof of U.S. citizenship to register for voting. No mail-in ballots except for illness, disability, military, or travel. Again, one of the reasons I fled Brooklyn in the summer of 2020 was because George Floyd happened. My whole neighborhood's burning to the ground. And what do I get for government support? I get 5 ballots sent to my house with not a single eligible voter in the house. That was enough for me to say, I'm out of here. This is getting crazy. I can't be a part of whatever's coming next. Time to go find safety somewhere else. And like in the military, right? Just like you see Trump changing tactics, just like you saw General Flynn change tactics. Sometimes you have to retreat in order to win. I retreated right then and there and said, we're not going through this. And probably the right decision, and indeed why you got to do it. Now, the good news is, right, as this is all going on, as the media continues to try to fight this war against voter ID and Trump and the SAVE Act, remember what they were saying about his war on the judiciary and his war on the UN and his war on all this stuff, right? You're going to see more of that FUD, because just like we looked at the Spanish guy trying to censor everyone, it turns out Trump is actually going to remove, or apparently Congress, not Trump, is considering removing sovereign immunity from EU censorship officials. And here is Schellenberger talking about it, about where this likely could be headed. So here's Schellenberger talking about Congress considering stripping sovereign immunity of EN censorship officials, prohibiting social media from enforcing censorship orders, and enabling private lawsuits against foreign entities. So the good news here is that means that Elon Musk is going to be able to sue that Spanish Dirty Sanchez guy, and American courts are going to recognize it. So the same way that you heard Ofcom and these other British guys try to censor Americans, and Americans saying you have no jurisdiction here, it's going to get flipped. They're going to have to say you have no jurisdiction in Europe, but like Trump has already sanctioned these guys. And I mean, straight up sanctioned. Remember, Thierry Breton got totally sanctioned, couldn't travel to America. I think by opening this up to private lawsuits, you're going to see some amazing things happen. And
thank you, Chairman Jordan, for holding this, and congratulations to the team that put the report together. It really confirms all of our worst suspicions about what was happening with Europe and the influence that they were having on U.S. speech. I wanted to ask specifically if you've considered help to Wyoming and New Hampshire with this Granite Act. This is the framework that would strip sovereign immunity from foreign governments for censorship-related activities. It would also prohibit the U.S. from enforcing any such orders and enable private lawsuits against foreign entities that are engaging in censorship. It sounded as though U.S. Undersecretary of State for Public Diplomacy Sarah Rogers said that that was in the works.
Will your government then take legal action against Ofcom if they try and overreach in the way you've described?
Well, there's already formal action proposed. There is a bill before the House called the Granite Act that would amend an existing statute to clarify that as a matter of American public policy, any penalties imposed by Ofcom are unenforceable against American companies. So our legislature will likely consider that, and will certainly consider other options if indeed the British government insists upon trying to nullify the First Amendment on American soil with respect to American companies.
And Congressman Darrell Issa appears to have mentioned it during your recent hearings.
If we begin a process of sanctioning whatever it takes, even against our best friends in Europe, in order to say you cannot be prosecuted in another country, to enforce the First Amendment.
Can you describe what the thinking is and whether you and your colleagues are interested in moving forward with something like that? And if not, then what specific legislative and other measures you can take to protect Americans and our right to free speech?
We're definitely looking at that. And I should have said this at the front end. Michael, thank you for all the work you've done. You've been tremendous in exposing what's going on. We appreciate that. And all of you on the call for covering this issue. But yeah, because there's always, what is the remedy for the harm? You want something like that. Now, in the broad sense, and I mentioned this earlier, it's the White House and the Trump administration can use this as part of what they negotiate when it comes to trade talks, and people want to trade with the United States in our huge market, of course. We all understand that. So that's one of them, but there's also the specific remedy if you were harmed or they're doing all the terms that it's shadow banning someone's content. Michael, you have firsthand experience in some of this area. What's the remedy? So we are definitely looking at that. We had bills we passed before, but the specific remedy you're talking about, we're taking a good look at that and see if there's something we can do.
The last question will be from Benedict Smith from The Telegraph. He said his mic's not working, but I'm going to read out his question, which states, the report's conclusion talks about legislative solutions to counter attacks on free speech. Could you support visa bans on the British government officials over incidences like the treatment of Graham Linehan? And what other levers can you pull here?
You want to come to the United States, want to hang out in the United States, want to vacation in the United States, then we would, the State Department, say, sorry, you've been involved in censoring speech in American speech and involved in censorship. We're not granting the visa. So that is one of the ways you can apply the pressure. We're looking at every possible route, negotiations when it comes to trade talks, visas. Is there other remedies like Michael talked about? We're looking at all that.
So as you see, the war here on the EU starts with the censorship piece, of course, right? Really important. Like I said, you need to propagate this stuff. So just as Trump is using his skills in America to induce this conversation about the election integrity, he's going out and picking a fight with the censors in Europe because they've been doing the same thing. They've been scamming elections. And we see here from a report yesterday, the House Judiciary Committee underlined that the EU has interfered in 8 European elections, continuing to do it in France. Of course, Marine Le Pen banned from running. Geert Wilders, who I thought won the prime ministership of Netherlands. I don't know what happened to that. Didn't he win? And then nothing came of it. So here he is saying, so maybe without interference of the EU, we would have won the elections in 2025. We lost with only 0.2% less votes than the winning left Liberal D66. And I, as leader of the PVV, could have been prime minister of the Netherlands. What a scam that would be, indeed. So here's the map of where they influenced. Thierry Breton said it, admitted it. And indeed, it looks like the whole European system is captured by the same forces that are threatening America. And now the good news is everything I've said all day today about Trump and his persuasion abilities and why it's so important to win this fight and get people interested and use these advanced techniques. It's important because it really just is a war about getting people to pay attention to the things that you think are important. And so you got to analyze the counterforce to what Trump is up to in order to predict where this is headed. So my prediction for a while now, and I know it's counterintuitive, mostly parties that are in power tend to do bad in the midterms. I continue to be absolutely certain if Trump is able to pass the SAVE Act, if we continue to talk about election integrity in Europe and other places and how manipulatable elections are, and we continue to cultivate this higher awareness among people that coincides with Bitcoiners' awareness about the world, which is don't trust, verify. If you're able to do that, if we're able to do that, I believe that the 2026 midterms will be an absolute bloodbath for the Democrat Party, from which I don't think they can ever come back. I think it's the end. So I'm not just predicting that Trump might eke out a little victory. If the SAVE Act goes through, Trump wins the midterms and the GOP wins the midterms by such extraordinary margins that there is no more Democrat Party left. I don't believe it was ever real in the first place. And well, some time ago, it was real, but not for a long time. And so what other force, if the SAVE Act comes through, could save the Democrat Party? This is why I'm predicting their toast. You've got to look at their ability to persuade. If they don't have censorship, and if they don't have the hallucination of the Washington Post and the New York Times, all of which are going to be collateral damage to the change that's going on, if MSNBC and all these other low IQ, low information platforms continue to go in the trend, in the direction they're trending, what's left to stop Trump from absolutely destroying and eviscerating the Democrat Party forever? You got to look at the counterforce. What counterforce is there out there? Well, the Kamala Harris account, Kamala HQ, has launched as of yesterday, as I told you. So remember, you've got Trump running kayfabe over months. You've got Trump running multi-year strategy in order to get people interested in the actual wizard war going on behind the scenes. And compare that to what we see from Kamala. They already had to change their headquarter name to 6-8 because the 6-7 one is done. I don't know if you guys know, we've talked about 6-7 here several times on the show. I could have told you already that my children, aged 8 and 6, were already on the anti-6-7 group at school, at their homeschool pod, by about maybe November. I think November, it was already anti-6-7. They were already joining teachers to tell the kids who were still doing 6-7 that they were not fun, stupid, and boring and annoying. And so indeed, Kamala went with the whole thing. Kamala Harris's new Gen Z-led media brand has already made a 6-7 joke. The cringe comments, Stephen Miller says, it took less than a single day for the Kamala 6-7 account to change the handle because of the cringe replies. Amazing. So the good news here, the only thing surprising is that they actually learned after a day that kids don't care about it anymore and in fact hate it. It's already obviously out of style and cringe and stupid. So we learned a little more about the account, though, just to understand why it's so stupid, right? The Kamala HQ account, rebranded as HQ headquarters 6-7, now 6-8, is run by Luminary Strategies, founded by Parker Butler and Lauren Kapp. They are alumni of the failed Harris Waltz campaign's social media team. HQ's funding comes from the leftist nonprofit People for the American Way and Brian Taylor Cohen's Chorus. People for the American Way receives most of its funding from George Soros' Open Society. Brian Taylor Cohen was recently exposed in a scandal for receiving dark money from 1630 Fund and paying up to 8,000 US trash tokens a month to influencers like Olivia Juliana. Remember her? She was the get out the vote for the young people, but we don't fat shame here. So I'm not going to talk about what a fat, like really fat, ugly slob she was, like eating food. So I don't do fat shaming. So I'm not going to talk about her in any way. She's probably really sweet. But that just to remind you who she is, right? And then David Pakman, of course, and Jojo from Jers, and Politics Girl McGowan, Amplify Coordinated Content. The 1630 Fund, managed by Arabella Advisors. Again, remember who Arabella Advisors are. That is SBF's parents. and Arabella Advisors, of course, part of all of this stuff. So here, Berger Action Fund, Open Society, Democracy Fund Voice, 12 people run the HQ account full time. This is yet another coordinated propaganda campaign funded by leftist billionaires attempting to push their globalist agenda and sow division. And just look at these pathetic losers. Obviously, not going to work. So you got to look at the counterforce. This is the counterforce to the unbelievable example of kayfabe and psychological manipulation that Trump is coordinating. And now predict where this is going, right? It doesn't take much. Is it going to be the 6-7 crowd who's 6 months late to 6 or 7 months late to what's going on? Or is it going to be the JD Vance folks? Here's JD Vance going into the meme game, right? Washington Post staff has been laid off, and AJ Cortez underlining JD Vance is going to win in 2028 and it won't be close. His meme ecosystem is impossible to go up against. Bro science is strongest and will change your life indeed. And you can even see here many people saying the same thing. JD Vance, some people saying may he reign for 1,000 years by embracing all of this stuff. And where is JD Vance heading next? JD Vance is going to the beautiful state of California, absolutely most beautiful place in the world. And he's going to be leading the anti-fraud task force. So you're going to see him go up against Gavin Newsom straight up. And this is pure wrestling. This is what kayfabe, how it functions. You're looking at the beginning of a title match. You're looking at the beginning, and it might not even be that Gavin Newsom makes it to the real WrestleMania, but it looks like they're going to get a main event ticket, and JD Vance is going to pull his moves, and Gavin Newsom is going to pull his moves. James Woods predicts this will be a test to see if JD Vance will be an action leader like President Trump or an all-talk loser like Senator Thune. My money is on JD mopping the floor with Greasy Gavin and emerging as an absolute successor to the greatest president in modern history. May he reign for 1,000 years with these memes and this victory. That's what many people are saying. And what does Gavin have going on? Yesterday, funny enough, when they talked about the remember when they talked about the train? So however many billion we're at already, right? They've got elevated rail track, but no rail. And then compare, the number was similar, was like, I don't know, a few billion compared to what Elon Musk has done with a few billion in the amount of space trips he's taken. And they've compared it to building a train here. So that's Gavin. And we're in an era of action now. This is the proof of work world. We're running the American population through Bitcoin memetics. We're going from don't trust, verify. Well, the 21 million, we're going from the 21 million. That was the first one Besant hits, right? I can't inflate magic internet money. Now we're seeing don't trust, verify. Meme number 3 that ties the room together, right? Proof of work. You know, you can disagree with me about the order of these memes and the order of what you learn about as a Bitcoiner and what you come into contact with as your worldview. I say 21 million is the first meme. I say that don't trust, verify is number 2. How do you tie 21 million to don't trust, verify? It's proof of work. And so proof of work is sort of, as you go down the rabbit hole, the third one you come across in order to understand and explain the other 2. And of course, you got to build stuff. That's the context in which we're headed. And here's the Gavin Newsom story. So this is pretty funny. Just after he made the announcement about the tracks and the whole railroad thing, I guess something caught on fire. I don't know exactly what's going on, but here's what we know. That indeed, hours after Gavin Newsom celebrated a major made-up milestone for California's criminally over-budgeted and delayed high-speed rail, it caught fire. Fortunately, no tracks were destroyed in the blaze. That's only because none have been laid in 16 years. So plywood and lumber, high-speed rail, plywood and lumber. Routine construction. Too good. So that's what's going on, guys. That's what's going on. Should leverage the Epstein files to break the filibuster. Hey, vote with us and we'll release your stuff last. Not a bad idea. Dune hates Trump. Doesn't matter. We're going to get him. Yeah, he is. He is. He is. I believed it turned out for the best. The election was stolen in 2020. Trump, I feel, is having much more of an impact during the presidency than he would have. Yeah, I think a lot of people agree with that. Phil C411. That's what I believe anyway. So add this all up. It looks like we're going through the consciousness elevating exercise of Bitcoin maximalists. It looks like we're going through the exercise of learning about 21 million from Besant himself. We're going through the exercises as a people, as a nation, as a collective unconscious. We're understanding that don't trust, verify is fundamental. And that thirdly, we're going into a world of actual productivity and work, proof of work becoming, again, fundamental. So subconsciously, everyone in America is getting primed to be a Bitcoiner, and we're heading in that direction. So I don't think about price for those reasons. I can see how the narrative in the next few months will play out this way. Trump will gain control of the Federal Reserve using Besant's skills. The Secretary of the Treasury will reinvigorate the constitutional republic, and they will weaponize the US dollar to go after all of these fiat captured countries and bring them into something like the Mar-a-Lago Accord, which is a trade and dollarization system. Anyone who wants to break away from this will indeed face a lot of obstacles. But inside of this, you have Bitcoin and you have the actual crack in the links between state and money. And that can be leveraged within one short generation to actually completely sever state and money. Just like bimetallism was a temporary condition before the Federal Reserve was created, it will be a temporary condition on the way out of the Federal Reserve system. And so it's a natural order of things, and probably the gentlest thing that can be done with these fiat sludge people, beyond some of the more extreme options that do exist out there that I don't think we need to contemplate or embrace because they're too harsh, even for me. So there you go, everyone. So folks saying it had to be this way, indeed. Yeah. What does it mean when fire keeps following a human? Glitter, get her done, Gavin. Indeed. So there you go, folks. There you go. Thank you for coming this morning. I see you're active in the chat. I love it. I got to figure out the chat for us all so that I can get it back to be plugged into our normal systems and take it that way. Let me just see if Hank is coming this morning. If not, I'm going to cut the feed and see you back here in a few hours, because I'll be doing the Canada show shortly. And there you go. There we go. And Brad Mills is going to make it to the show this afternoon. So if y'all want to come around, we've got some Brad Mills. We got some Dave Bradley at 1 p.m. Eastern. We're going to be talking about all things Canada. And of course, as you all know, it's very funny indeed when I have my co-hosts together and Canada just leading the world in clown world. You know, if you thought Europe was stupid, it's nothing compared to Canada. I've been telling you for a long time, Canada is filled with the dumbest people on earth, and you'll see up close what I mean if you come around at 1 p.m. So it's a little different than the vibe here. It's not just me. I've got the two co-hosts. I try to ask good questions to them and let them explain their worldview. So indeed, Amon says, thanks, Nolan. How is Canada? Don't know. Haven't been in a while, Amon. I'll be back when the weather gets nicer, but you can hear about how stupid they all are if you come to the 1 o'clock show this afternoon. And indeed, I'll be with my co-hosts and we'll have a good time. We'll cover all the stuff. There's lots to talk about. You saw Harper put up how to have his public hanging, not the public hanging that a lot of us are anticipating for a lot of the deep state treasonous sons of bitches like Mike Pence. Not that kind of public hanging, a different kind of public hanging. In this case, a official portrait. And he said some stupid stuff during it, so we'll laugh at that. And then we will definitely be talking about some of Carney's recent mischief, as well as the prospects, of course, of the country surviving the next 6 months, which I don't think are great. I think it's pretty much over. And we'll be getting into all of those stories when we get there. Let me see what we're hearing from my studio, see if Hank is coming around. And no, I don't want that. All right, just let him know. We'll find out if he's coming. If not, I'm going to cut the feed and see you all in 2 hours. I'm going to have some lunch. I still haven't adjusted to the time, so I'm a little still jet lagged on, I was in Dubai just long enough to get adjusted to the time there. And now that I'm back, I got to readjust. So those 12-day trips are just enough to adjust. So I don't advise them because you're just living in perpetual jet lag if that's the case. I slept like crazy last night, though. I went to bed at 8 p.m. this time, and I slept until 5 a.m., my normal bedtime. So it's only about 2 hours extra, I suppose. I usually go to bed at around 9 or 10 and tend to wake up at 4 or 5. So it's not that much different. But still, it was a great sleep. I'm really happy to have had it, but I still woke up a little groggy. So we're not quite back to 100% yet. But after the weekend, oh, there's Hank. He did join. There we go. There we go. Let me welcome Hank now. Let him get adjusted. Let him... No glasses today. His thumb is up. He's ready to go. There he is. How you doing, Hank?
Never wearing the glasses again. You pointed them out yesterday. Now I'm incredibly self-conscious about them. They're gone. I threw them in the garbage. But I'm here.
You look great. Stop. You look great. You look great.
Well, there's a lot to be excited about right now. Although I want you and your audience to know I just came from a really sad funeral. I think Bitcoin's dead again. And the most recent people fell for it. And that's not looking good. But yeah, I just wanted to be the one to break the news right here for Roxham TV.
Yeah, it's hard, man. It's dead. And what are we gonna do? I know I go to regular funerals. Somehow it just keeps coming back to life. But I think this time the walls are closing in. The walls are closing in.
Yeah, I'm prepping myself for this one. I got a lot of "I told you so"s on my menu from friends and family. I'm gonna have to deal with. So I'm prepping for that over the weekend. How are you guys on your show this morning? What have you been talking about, Nolan?
Great. Well, we were talking a little bit about something called the Mar-a-Lago Accords. That's where I started the show to explain a little bit about what some people say is an inorganic drop in the Bitcoin price, but to try and get a bit of sense of who the players are, maybe not just so mischievous as that. Multiple instances of Stefan Miron and Scott Bessent more or less saying that something like this was coming from, documents published over the past couple of years. Mm-hmm. But part of the process of shaking out actors and people they don't know who are involved. And then, because Scott Bessent also said magic internet money yesterday, and, a lot of people starting to talk about the memetics. So I basically went through a series of memes and memetic encounters that people have with Bitcoin. So the original meme of Bitcoin, the first one, if you go down the rabbit hole that you encounter, is this one. It's the 21 million, right? When he said you can't print more magical internet money, he's sort of underlying the 21 million meme. The next one, of course, is the don't trust verify meme, and it leads you directly to that. So I talked about the SAVE Act and the filibuster, the zombie filibuster getting removed likely. And again, that's sort of the second memetic you come to in Bitcoin. We can debate about what's first, second, and third. I think 21 million is the first one you encounter. I think the second one you encounter is don't trust verify. And after that, the third one is proof of work. So proof of work, which sort of ties the room in the Lebowski sense, it kind of ties the room together, right? You know, you understand 21 million and don't trust verify with proof of work.
Yeah.
And so trying to predict where things are going after this and just looking at the persuasion game on the ground. So Trump versus, you know, sort of all takers. I looked at the Kamala Harris 6-7 account already turned into 6-8 because they didn't know that, you know, my kids could have told you back in November, they had already joined the anti 6-7 group in their homeschool pod because already by then 8-year-olds knew it was out. So that whole thing was a failure yesterday. They've already rebranded to Kamala HQ 68. And then the proof of work one, analyzing the idea of JD Vance heading out to California to do some of the fraud stuff, the Minnesota style, look into that. So seeing a sort of, you know, main event proxy fight between Gavin Newsom and JD Vance, analyzing their potential impact on persuasion going forward. Of course, JD Vance's meme game is just so strong, and you can imagine that it's way beyond the 6-7 thing. People sharing pictures of the fat one with the hair doing spins as he heads to California. Very good. Yeah. And then I compared it to the proof of work thing, you know, Gavin Newsom with the big press conference yesterday with the train. It caught on fire after the track they never built was on fire and burning. So not looking great for Gavin. So basically, you know, to think about the price of Bitcoin in the context of Americans being sort of walked through the Bitcoin rabbit hole here, 21 million and the market crash, perhaps being well understood with Bessent's comments in Congress 2 days ago, as well as some of the stuff they published from the federal board and Stefan Moran about what's going to happen with the Mar-a-Lago Accords, and then looking at the SAVE Act and the filibuster with the Don't Trust Verify component, and then just building. So my prediction flew from those things. People becoming Bitcoiners, whether or not they have the Bitcoin, they're going down the rabbit hole because America's going down the rabbit hole. So there you go.
Come join us, everybody, because it sounds like you had a lot on tap today. We got a lot coming up here in just a bit. A lot of guests. I got Fernando, the Bitcoin Libertarian, joining me in a bit. Walker America's going to be joining us in our second hour. We got Eric V. Stacks from the What is Money show will be joining us in the first hour. So a lot going on. We'll be talking about, obviously, the Bitcoin price dump. Is it over? Is it dead? I'll be talking from the front lines of just a funeral, of course. You know, there's what's going on in Pakistan. We got more information on Greenland, what's going on there. It's a packed show today. I don't have enough time to even talk about it. Nolan, I'm going to let you wrap up, but everybody stay tuned. Rock Some TV News coming up.
Everyone stay tuned, everyone. Head out over there. Go see Hank. Lots of guests, lots of Bitcoin chat. We know you love the Bitcoin stuff. Can't wait to hear more. See you later, Hank. Have a great weekend. See you Tuesday.
Yep, see you Tuesday.
Peace, my man. All right, folks, I'm about to go to the transition. If you're watching on the chat channels, including YouTube and Rumble, if that's how you're chatting with me, you will see the thanks for watching screen right after. I just want to tell you thanks for watching. If you are watching those chat channels, go quickly to Roxham and see Hank's show. I'll be on those in a few minutes. Let's go. Peace.